Scafflogic introduces you to a world of logic. Hello, and welcome to this training video. In this video, I would like to show you how to arrange sections around a building using the stripe function. In this video, I will be using Layher Allround scaffold. If you have a different scaffold brand, you may notice that I have different measurements and components available for use. I have already made a building for our demonstration, and I will now go to my section and click on the Add Stripe function. The Add Stripe function will aid you in placing sections around your building, making your job much easier. We begin by clicking on the first corner and telling the system where to start from and where to end. When you click on the second corner, you can see that the system has automatically generated the sections with exact measurements. Sometimes there will be a small difference in measurement of up to 10 to 15 centimeters, but you can always move your mouse just a bit and click it again, and the stripe will be recalculated. If you need to go around a corner, we have a function called Finish Type, which will assist you in getting around your corner. Here I am selecting long corner, and you can see that the system is giving me a purple line, which indicates the angle of the corner. When I align the purple line flush against the building, I am informed that I am short by 2 centimeters, which, in this case, I can live with. I will tell the system to continue at this stripe, and I will drag it down to the next corner and click again. At this point, a new solution is displayed. I can continue on to the next corner and the next, like so. It looks like I am a little short here, so I will make a small adjustment by adding a few centimeters until it fits perfectly. I will now erect the scaffold, and you can see that our problem is solved without having to manually place any sections. If you don't like the system's choice for the section, or you have, for example, a building with an inside corner, please look at the videos under Advanced Techniques where you can learn how to change the combinations of the sections.